The 14th Amendment has been getting a lot of attention lately, but do you know what it stands for?
They could tell you about their First Amendment rights, they could tell you about the Second Amendment, but they couldn't tell you about the 14th Amendment. And that seems very odd to me.
You'll hear from a civil rights attorney who spoke at ISU just ahead on WGLT's Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, Illinois' Lieutenant Governor starts a conversation with women of color entrepreneurs in a visit to Bloomington.
I think about how many times women are silenced, women are ignored, their voices are ignored.
Plus, a Bloomington doctor's all-natural treatment for migraines could be going global.
They always ask, is there any alternative? Should I take this? Is there any other option?
Those stories follow a Bloomington Normal News update. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patient Paul Brandt.
So I just went without them for all those years. I talked to somebody who had recently gotten hearing aids and talked about the fact that they were connected to the TV. And so that kind of prompted me to try it again.
Paul's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
On the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. I'm John Norton. Today on Sound Ideas, we mark the start of Black History Month with the first of several features throughout February that highlight the contributions that African Americans have made in the country and the struggles they have faced. Today, we focus on the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The post-Civil War amendment granted citizenship to the formerly enslaved, and it was the focus of a keynote address for Illinois State University's annual dinner honoring Martin Luther King Jr. Civil rights attorney and scholar Sherilyn Ifill was the featured speaker. WGLT's Lauren Warnicki was there and has this story.
Ifill recently stepped down as president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. The bulk of her 3-decade career has surrounded voting rights and the 14th Amendment. Ifill says the 14th Amendment is central to American democracy, despite most people's lack of familiarity with it.
The average man or woman on the street couldn't tell you what was in the 14th Amendment. They could tell you about their First Amendment rights, they could tell you about the Second Amendment, but they couldn't tell you about the 14th Amendment. And that seems very odd to me because it so powerfully, I think, sets the template for how most of us think about this country and what we think our democracy is about.
The 14th Amendment guarantees birthright citizenship and equal protection under the law.
This was the project that the first founders were unable to commit themselves to. Instead, they made compromises that counted us as 3/5 of a person for purposes of representation. And while not using the word slavery, allowed for the what they called importation of persons. All of that is in the first Constitution.
As the centerpiece of the Reconstruction Amendments, the 14th Amendment extended constitutional rights to Black men born in the United States.
White women were citizens from the beginning of the Republic, but could not vote until 1920. We know that while many young men were shipped off to war in World War I and World War II and the beginnings of the Vietnam War, if they were between 18 and 21, they could not vote.
Ifill warns of the fragile state of American democracy amid gerrymandering and other acts of voter suppression. The Legal Defense Fund sued Georgia in response to legislation preventing line relief. That was a law restricting volunteers from passing out snacks and water to voters waiting in long lines at the polls. Additional hardline rules on ID requirements and absentee, provisional, and mail-in ballots, according to the suit, disproportionately impact voters of color and people with disabilities.
So the fact that what we're seeing now is essentially an assault on voting, that voting itself has become a partisan issue, which it never was, I think should alarm us all just as a democracy.
Section 3 of the 14th Amendment has recently entered public discourse. It is the foundation of a legal argument in several states attempting to remove Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. Section 3 states that no person may swear an oath to the Constitution having previously engaged in an insurrection. The Illinois Board of Elections voted Tuesday to reject a bid to remove Mr. Trump from the March 19th primary. Colorado and Maine have already passed measures pending Supreme Court appeals, and there are additional challenges unfolding in 12 other states. Amendments. Eiffel says throughout history, some of America's most pivotal inflection points are tied to the 14th Amendment.
But when we talk about affirmative action and when we talk about discrimination of any kind, we're talking about the 14th Amendment because of that equal protection of laws provision. So we're often having a conversation about the 14th Amendment, but we don't know we're having a conversation about the 14th Amendment.
With reporting from correspondent Jim Staley, I'm Lauren Warnicki.
Sherilyn Eiffel has been appointed inaugural Vernon Jordan Endowed Chair in the Civil Rights at Howard Law School, where she will launch the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. She was the keynote speaker at Illinois State University's Martin Luther King Jr. Cultural Dinner. Democracy is the focus of a new short-term podcast series that WGLT is hosting. Democracy's Future is a partnership with the Vedette, a student media outlet at Illinois State University. Student reporters at WGLT and the Vedette will be lifting the voices of students, educators, and others on the campus community to hear their thoughts about our form of government, the issues they want to hear the candidates discuss in this year's elections, and where they see the country headed. Leaders in both major political parties say democracy is on the ballot in this year's election. In our first episode, which just dropped today, you'll hear from J.N. Benson, a junior political science major at ISU. Benson says she sees more young people getting politically active because they don't feel elected leaders are listening to them.
I feel like there's been a lot more challenging of our political system and challenging of the systemic and traditional values that we've been operating under. And I feel like that has gotten so many more people involved, especially in youth, especially for women, people of color, the LGBTQ community. I feel like a lot of more people are speaking out and being active in our political system.
Ben Howell is a junior mass media student at ISU. He says our current form of democracy is flawed. He says he's not excited about either of the leading major party candidates for president, incumbent Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump. Howell says he would like to see a legitimate third-party option.
I personally think it would be great for everybody. I think it would shake up politics, and shake up as in hand on the lid of the jar and violently shake it up. But I think it would put new things into perspective. It would put new opinions on the table.
This is the first episode of Democracy's Future, a podcast series partnering between WGLT and the Vedette. You can subscribe to Democracy's Future on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts. An organization that's been helping adolescents in Bloomington Normal who have struggled in traditional school settings is marking an anniversary, and it's helping more students than ever as they move on to adulthood. You'll learn more about what's going on with Youth Build McLean County on tomorrow's Sound Ideas.
Let's triangulate for a minute here, shall we? Job openings, the unemployment rate, and inflation. Review amongst yourselves and discuss. We'll do it next time on Marketplace.
Listen to Marketplace beginning at 5:30 this afternoon on WGLT, sponsored by CEFCU.
As the one-year anniversary of the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment approaches, the people who stayed are still dealing with the aftermath. Misty Allison is one of them, and she says the cleanup process is still ongoing.
There is still some contamination that's existing, especially with these waterways.
One East Palestine residents search for answers tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News.
Listen tomorrow between 4 and 9 a.m. on 89.1 WGLT.
Stories and conversations around Bloomington Normal and McLean County. This is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton's We Thrive initiative made a recent stop in Bloomington Normal as the first of her statewide We Chats. Those are casual conversations about what Illinois women need to achieve financial freedom. Organized by the Peoria-based Minority Business Development Center, the Bloomington We Chat gathered more than 20 women of color who own small businesses in the region. Stratton tells WGLT's Lauren Warnicki some of the things she heard surprised her.
I didn't realize that I would hear from a number of the women that they get started and then they get to a particular point and then they're not sure where to go next. They're not sure where to get resources about how to grow their business, how to expand their business, and that they often feel stifled at some point. I think there might be a level of some sort of assumption that women business owners have some level of mentorship, whether it's from chambers or of commerce or through other entities, but they were very sort of just all nodding their heads as one woman in particular said, "It is lonely here."
Is it like a lack of resources, or is it a lack of awareness of existing resources, or maybe a combination of the two?
It's just remarkable how I hear time and time again, those weren't the lessons that I learned growing up. I did not learn the lessons about how to start a business, how to invest my money, how to plan for the future, how to, just so many things that are sort of basic. And I've heard some women say, but my brothers learned it, or the boy cousins in my family learned it. And they're just, historically and generationally still just is not the same level of conversation that's happening at our kitchen tables and in other spaces in our home and in our schools and on our campuses about women and what we should be thinking about in terms of money and our financial futures and being economically empowered. So I think that there's one part that's that. And then I do think that we can do more to make sure that resources that women are aware of the resources that exist.
Whether it's intentional or not, just by virtue of being there, those 25 women in Bloomington Normal now have 24 other resources that they may not have had before.
I saw the women in the room, maybe having businesses in the same exact towns. Like I know some were from Peoria and other places in central Illinois, and there was such a camaraderie that quickly. Because they could relate to each other. When someone said, "This is what I'm experiencing," and you saw the other heads nodding, and then afterwards they're exchanging business cards and saying how affirming it was, that lets me know that these spaces are needed.
Do you ever feel isolated? Is it somehow beneficial to you to be part of this kind of communal experience with women across all different sectors and areas of leadership?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'm not sure I've ever been asked that question about the impact that it has on me to be in these rooms. There's a part of this work where it was really important to make sure that women's voices led the way. And, I think about how many times women are silenced, women are ignored, their voices are ignored, or I can't speak for you, but I've been in meetings throughout my career where I have a good idea and I share the idea and it's, whatever, not much reaction, but then a man gives the exact same idea and it's celebrated. Those are pretty common experiences that we can think about for women. And so for me, what it is it is an opportunity to be in community with other women who are thinking about, what the governor and I have set forth, and that is to make Illinois the best state in the nation for women and girls. And I chair the Illinois Council on Women and Girls that continues to work on this area. So it's very affirming for me to be in this space and hear women. You can almost see the empowerment come, not because of what we're going to do as this initiative comes to a close, but we see the empowerment happening because they are given a space where it is safe to say what they need and to feel supported by others in the room. And so it's impossible that I would not also be inspired by that.
What do you perceive as being maybe some outcomes?
So there's so many things that we have already done, and we're uplifting those things for the women of our state to make sure that they know, hey, we are working on your behalf. So that's one thing that we want to do. Secondly, as I mentioned, we want them to know how to access the resources that will help them do what they need to do. So it's wonderful that we offer through the Department of Public Health free mammograms to those who qualify. Do women know that that's the case? And usually when I go into a room and mention that, they're sort of like, I never knew that. So we have to make sure that we take what already exists, whether it's in the state or within our community-based organizations, and bring it together, collate it, if you will, so that there's and I don't know what, I haven't envisioned exactly. I mean, I have a thought in my mind of some sort of portal, but I don't know what it will look like. but a place where women are like, that is for me. That is where I can find the information that I need, and making it more accessible to women.
Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton says one possible outcome from her WeChat conversations is a tailored online portal connecting women to existing state resources. She spoke with WGLT's Lauren Warnicki. Also this week, Stratton launched the Illinois Healing Centered Task Force. The task force is part of the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative aimed at reforming Illinois' criminal justice system through trauma-informed policymaking. This is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Thanks for listening on this Thursday. I'm John Norton. A Bloomington Normal doctor who created an all-natural supplement to help those with migraines and other headache disorders is now bringing his product to international consumers. Dr. Benjamin Tamarazzi runs his own headache and pain management practice in Bloomington and another in California. The migraine prevention supplement he created, called MyGuard, launched in the U.S. a couple of years ago. He's now expanding to international markets and spent this week in Dubai at a trade show. In this Sound Health interview with WGLT's Ryan Denham, Tamarazzi explains the spark that led to MyGuard's invention.
A lot of patients already were taking prescription medications for migraines or other headache disorders. And they had side effects, or it didn't work, or they heard of the side effects. Some other family member, their sister or their brother, was using some prescription medications. And so they always asked, is there any alternative? Should I take this? Is there any other option? And we knew from prior studies by the American Headache Society and the American Academy of Neurology the importance of certain all-natural substances such as magnesium, vitamin B2, feverfew, butterbur. There is bunch of all-natural ingredients that are available to us, and these actually were extensively studied by these prestigious organizations. And American Headache Society and the American Academy of Neurology had provided efficacy designation for these substances.
So how does MyGuard work?
Migraine basically is a metabolic disorder of the brain. So what happens in people who are predisposed to migraine headaches, at the cellular level in their brain, there is a faulty metabolic pathway. And as they cannot produce enough energy in their brain cells, then the level of stress, basically oxidative stress in the brain, goes up. And that is the beginning. So when you use these supplementation with these all-natural ingredients, you supply the brain with those ingredients that your brain is really needing them to process the metabolic activities properly. And then you overcome the oxidative stress and the neuroinflammation.
Does a product like this go through any sort of government regulatory approval, like through FDA, anything like that?
So supplements in the United States, they are not required to be approved by FDA. However, and most of them actually are not even produced in an FDA-registered facility. So our product is produced in an FDA-registered facility, but because there is tremendous science behind the ingredients of MyGuard, as they have been studied for decades, all these ingredients for efficacy and safety. And then we took it to the next step, which would be producing it in an FDA registered facility. And they have their own pharmacists and chemists that they analyze the formulation for compatibility, no interaction between the different ingredients in the formulation. And then we took it a step beyond that, and we have the product third-party tested, again, for compatibility, safety, and lack of any heavy metals or anything that is harmful.
What has been the biggest challenge for you in terms of kind of making this transition from doctor running a private practice to entrepreneur and actually creating a product and selling it?
That is absolutely the biggest hurdle for a person who is not business oriented. Running a practice, you may call it's kind of like a business, but absolutely this is a different world. And so the biggest hurdle was how to spread the word about the product. And of course, word of mouth always is the best thing, but that's such a slow process. Our patients have been using it. They have nothing but brag about it and 5-star reviews from our patients. But we had to start basically using social media marketing. So it needs a lot of funds, really. Financially, that's the biggest issue, that you need to advertise on Google, on Instagram, and all these other platforms.
Well, Doctor, you've been on the market in the U.S. for a few years, and now you're expanding to international markets. And you're getting some help from Bradley University's Turner Center for Entrepreneurship, which does some international trade work. So what have they helped with?
When I learned about STEP program, the State Trade Expansion Program, most states, a lot of states, I don't know if all of them, they have this program, but I was fortunate enough to connect with Bradley University's team, the STEP program team, Mr. James Foley and Mr. Jim Ryan, extremely helpful and constructive in this whole process that we got involved. And basically what they do is they connect you. Most importantly is they have a branch of this system, or in this system there is something called matchmaking program. So they identify the prospective attendees into these expos and they match you with them. So you're not like a fish in the ocean because there's thousands of people there, but they select they identify some interested parties that are actually looking for a product like ours, for instance, and they contact them and they create a connection.
That's Dr. Benjamin Tamarazi, creator of the MyGuard supplement for those with migraines and other headache disorders. He spoke with WGLT's Ryan Denham.
Support for WGLT health coverage comes from Carle Health. You can count on Carle as your partner in healthcare. Information at carle.org.
And that is Sound Ideas Today. WGLT's news magazine is made possible in part by Bloomington Normal Audiology. I'm John Norton. Story help today from WGLT's Lauren Warnicki and Ryan Denham. Ryan Toohey edits Sound Ideas. You can find all of our Sound Ideas interviews and stories at WGLT.org, and you can subscribe to Sound Ideas on the NPR app and wherever you get your podcast. And we'd love to know what you think of Sound Ideas. Comment on our Facebook page. We're WGLT FM. At WGLT News is our handle on Instagram and Threads. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.